Good morning, world of readers. I am Book Dragon Erin, and I would like to welcome you all back to my booktube channel, where today I will be talking a little bit about books I hated that schools make you read. So yes, this is not a book review. Yes, this is a book talk tag. I am guessing that this happens all over the USA, that schools make you read books. While I never ever complained about reading books, the idea that schools make you read the books that they choose is the thing that still bothers me today, and I'm not even in school anymore. Also, how can some schools declare books like Slam by Nick Hornby classic books? That isn't classic, it's modern trash. Slam is like the Jersey Shore show of novels, and no one can convince me otherwise. Anyway, with all that aside, let's jump right into the video. The first book on this list is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. The first time I read this book, I was in a really bad headspace when I first read it, so it was really triggering to me from the boys' brutality towards one another. For example, the torture of the little boy, and then Simon's death, and then Piggy's death. Those bothered me so much when I read that book back in high school that I couldn't even finish the book. I was just going online and researching the book so I could do everything possible to avoid reading the book. So after high school, I read the book again, and I actually enjoyed it up to a point. Yes, the brutality is still dark and very difficult for me to handle, but I am in a much different headspace now, so I can appreciate how this book is a classic compared to other books like Slam. The next book we have is Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Oh my god, reading this book was torture. Basically, I saw this book as a narrative of a spoiled teenager complaining about the trials of life that life itself throws at you while not taking responsibility. And before you ask, yes, I agree with everything Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy said about Holden Caulfield, who is rich, spoiled, boring, etc. I cannot stand him as a character, not Glenn Quagmire, I love him. I'm talking about Holden Caulfield. I hated Holden, and the way the narrative played out, it was like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. Okay, I did the thing. Okay, here's what we're talking about now. Oh, look, there's a hooker. I'm gonna go pay her to hang out with me. Oh, hey, what's with your profession? Why do you decide to be a hooker? And it's just like, okay, get to the point and develop the actual plot. Just stop saying you're gonna do something and then describe it as you're doing it. That doesn't make any sense to me, and that just makes my skin boil. Like, I literally feel hot, and not in the good way. I mean, this is just such an aggravating book that I tried reading it once and I was done. The next book we have is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Vintage guy lies to everyone. Vintage guy wants the girl. Vintage guy dies. Vintage guy doesn't get the girl. Vintage guy doesn't have any real friends or family like he said he did. Even though this book is a classic, I will admit that, I still don't think it deserved all the hype that it has gotten over the years, but that's just me, because all I saw in this book was Gatsby, also known as Jay Gats, lying about who he was to impress a girl who is already married, so he wanted to have an affair with her and then have her leave her husband and run away with him, but then just nothing goes his way. He never gets the girl. The ending is so depressing that I needed to just clear my head and meditate by listening to Celtic battle music, because surprisingly that calms me down. But oh my gosh, reading this book was absolute torture. My brother, he isn't much of a reader, but he will read just about anything scientific. I always joke that he's the science to my fiction, because he always reads the science books and I always read the fiction books. But anyway, When my brother read this book, he actually considered it one of his favorite books of all time, so I'm actually really happy for him that he enjoyed this book far more than I did. I can't believe that there are so many book-to-movie adaptations of The Great Gatsby. It just boggles my mind how it's so popular, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Moving on to Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This book was torture. Was absolute torture. Two men, George and Lenny, are going after their dream during the Great Depression. They would like a farm with a bunch of animals, especially rabbits. Just as their dream is within reach, their future is ripped away from them when Lenny accidentally kills someone, and George does a mercy killing on Lenny. All in all, this book definitely depressed me, and within 10 minutes of watching the movie adaptation, I was a sobbing mess. And I was in such a bad headspace when I read this book, and I plan on never reading that book again. Now moving on to The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. In reading this book, I was so triggered by the bullying and harassment that made me want to climb into the book, become a part of the book, and then just beat up everyone. I hated it. There were too many stereotypical high school characters, like the tough jocks, the pretty girls, the nerds, the theater nuts, etc., which made me think too much about me and my history in high school being the freaky girl. Not the cool freaky either. I mean the outright messed up kind of freaky girl. I get that I was a little strange in high school, but that was because my bipolar disorder was yet to be diagnosed. So I was manic, and I don't even remember half the things that I did or said in high school because I was unmedicated. I played into the freaky girl mindset, which was something that I probably should never have done in the first place. Before I get emotional, I'm going to change the subject back to the book. All in all, the pedo aunt was just too much for me to handle, and that's all I'm going to say before I break out in emotional tears. Thank you all for understanding. Next topic. Before we go, I would like to tell a little bit of a story. When I was in high school, reading books was one of my outlets for the depression that I was dealing with, and I read so many books. Almost all of them were great in their own ways. I went to my teachers and gave book recommendations of books that I thought my classmates might actually like, instead of the books that the school chose. My teachers told me those books would be too triggering for the students. Now, the books that I highly recommended at that time were We'll Never Be Apart by Emiko Jean, which is a mental health fiction novel, Hate List by Jennifer Brown, which focuses on the aftermath of a school shooting, and Crank by Ellen Hopkins. This is a mainly freestyle poetry novel that focuses on the downfall of drug abuse. I was irritated that they shot down my suggestions, but I understood. Partly. However, when I started reading the books that my high school required that I read, I was so triggered into self-harming again. I went to my teachers about the struggle in reading these books, and they told me to get over it. In not so nice words. Before I go into a tirade about how much I hated high school, I just have to say thank God for the YouTube series I Read Blank So You Don't Have To. With half the books that my high school forced me to read, I went online researching all these books so I didn't have to read them, and that actually saved my sanity. And I would not call it cheating, I would simply call it assisted winning, since I did get straight A's on these tests because of the videos. I really wanted to focus on my own mental health, and reading a book that was so triggering to me wasn't worth risking self-harming to the extent that I did. It was horrible. Anyway, that is all for today, so if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button to show some support, subscribe to my booktube channel to get more videos like this, turn on that notification button to be notified when I upload brand new videos every single Sunday, Keep on reading and have a great day, everyone!